Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for coming back to our wonderful event. We are so excited to have you because we have as yet another incredible speaker. His name is Mark Victor. And Mark is an attorney. He's an attorney in Phoenix, and he's got quite a background. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about himself. And then we're going to talk about his favorite subject, live and let live, and the movement that he's created called the Live and Let Live movement. So thank you, Mark, for being with us tonight. We're so happy you could join us.
Hey, it's great to be invited and great to have an opportunity to frankly tell people about the most important thing going on in the world right now.
Yeah, so you must think that this is powerful enough to start to bring people together, because right now, as everyone knows and everyone listening to this, we're more divided right now than we have since the Civil War, and in this country, and I think in the world. So how can the live and let live principle bring people together?
Well, I think when you start with the statement, it's the most important thing going on in the world right now. Yeah, that should get some attention, but I'm not backing off on it. It is the most important thing going on in the world right now. What could possibly be more important than working in an organized, rational way to try to achieve not just freedom, but peace, and not just for your community or your society, but for the world, because that's our community now, whether we like it or not, right? Coronavirus just showed us something. I don't know exactly what happened in China, but somebody did something in China, as best we can tell, that affected the entire world. They created what I'd call, as a lawyer, a substantial threat to other people. And it indeed turned into an actual threat, and they initiated force, and they violated what I would call the live and let live rule. So we've got to find ways to reach out to the rational people of the world. The rational ones, the people who can be reasoned with, and we can speak to and say, look, maybe we should organize around an idea called live and let live. How do you feel about that, Clyde? If I said, hey, Clyde, I'm for live and let live. That's how I feel about things. That's probably something most people, in fact, I think all rational people are tending to agree with that. Yes, live and let live sounds like a good rule. And then you have to get into the details, right? Well, okay, fine. What does it mean? Well, when you start thinking about what it means, one thing I know is if I'm an aggressor against you, say I hit you over the head with a baseball bat or something, I'm certainly not living consistently with the live and let live rule, right? I mean, I think you have to agree with that. So being an aggressor, that violates the live and let live rule. I think we can all agree on that. What's an aggressor? It doesn't take me very long to go through the various scenarios to agree that initiation of force, that's being an aggressor. Fraud, if you commit fraud on somebody, that's an aggressor. That's being an aggressor. That's why it's a crime. Or coercion, if you're coercing somebody to do something, you're overcoming their will, and you're not letting them live and let live. This should be pretty obvious. If the person I'm speaking to, like the people in this group here, are more sophisticated, then I'll say, look, not just there's another category, the substantial risk category. This is the reason if you're driving down the road because you're drunk or some other reason that you're creating a risk to another person, we can say, sorry, you can't do that. You can't do dangerous things that subject other people to these kinds of harms. That's the reason why we have self-defense, right? You don't have to wait until my fist actually hits your face. Once I make the substantial threat, and in the case of self-defense, if it's imminent, well, then you get to hit me first. That's because I violate the live and let live rule when I create a substantial threat. So if you agree with that, the only other thing I need to get you agree to is super even easier than this. I say this live and let live rule. Don't you think it should apply to everybody? The rich, the poor, the fat, the thin, the whatever language you speak or foods you eat or holidays you celebrate or people you love or whatever skin color, who cares? Doesn't it apply to everybody equally? This seems like an easy yes. And if it applies to everybody, well, if we formed a little group, Clyde, if me and you and one of our friends got together, Should our group be exempt from the live and let live
There we
rule?
go. So it
Of
should
course
apply
not.
to every institution.
Every group, and even big groups and small groups, we apply them there as like, what about corporations? We're not trying to favor nobody gets favoritism from the rule. Corporations don't get to violate the live and let live rule, period. And like everybody else, if we find out they're doing it, we're going to do everything we can do to stop them. They don't get to violate that rule. That's the reason we tell the guy who's trying to commit a robbery, hey, we're going to stop you if you can. We don't need your agreement with our rule. You don't get to violate the rule. Sorry. So this applies to corporations and the biggest of groups, the government. Why would we want our government to be violating the live and let live rule? Where would they have the authority to do it anyways if no person or group can violate the live and let live rule? Seems obvious. So if you agree to that, we're done. There's only two possibilities at this point. Possibility number one, we agree on everything in terms of what the law ought to be. Or possibility two, you change your mind about the live and let live rule. Something about either how it, you think that an initiation of force, fraud, or coercion is okay now, or putting someone at a substantial risk is an okay thing to do, or it should apply to some group, or big group, or small group, the government, the corporation, a group, whatever. You're going to back off. So that's pretty easy. So we call this sort of figuring out what the law should be. The law, not morality, but the law. The law should be calibrated around the live and let live rule. Doesn't that make sense?
Absolutely.
You can do whatever you want, but you don't get to violate the live and let live rule. If you violate the rule, we're going to do something to you. That's why we call it the law, because there's a formal consequence for you if you violate the rule, period.
Right.
So this gives me an opportunity to talk about something very important. And I don't lead talking about any of this, by the way. I'm talking to you about this because you understand some of these issues. But let me tell you where I start the discussion. There's a new global peace movement called Live and Let Live right now. And it's based on certain values. Yeah, values. It has positions on ethical questions. Let me tell you the positions. Open-mindedness. We value open-mindedness. Intolerance. We like tolerance too. Involuntary kindness. Notice I said voluntary kindness, not involuntary kindness, because anything involuntary violates the rule, and that should be illegal. But voluntary kindness is an aspirational value of our movement. And also civility. We should be able to disagree with people in a way that's agreeable to them. And also, finally, raising human happiness is an important value, increasing human happiness while decreasing human suffering. These are values. Now, let me explain the difference between values and legality. If you choose to violate one of those values, you get to do that all day long. If somebody proposes to change the law to say you must be open-minded or tolerant or civilized even, or engage in voluntary kindness, I would oppose that. This is morality. This goes into the ethics world. So we have two choices here on morality. Choice number one, we all force each other. We hit each other over the head forever, seeing who can impose their morality on the other person. That's choice one. That's what we have now. Some people, the Muslims, think we should have Sharia law. And some Christians think you should have Christian law imposed on you. And atheists may want to impose their rules on you. Or everybody's trying to fight to get their rules imposed on somebody else. They shouldn't do that. That's the ethics world. We should say, you know what? Nobody gets choice two. Nobody gets to put their morality into the law. Everybody's got to take their morality out of the law. What we agree on is what's called the least common denominator of morality. That's the live and let live rule. Remember that? Don't initiate force, fraud, or coercion, or put someone at a substantial risk. All civilized moral codes agree with that. Yeah. Show me one that doesn't. That's the law. That's the least common denominator of morality. We're going to call that the legal world. The moral world is everything else. The aspirational values go there. So you can live in any way you want, so long as you don't violate the rule. But if you live like a jerk, if you're some racist, bigoted, horrible miser, you don't care about your fellow human being, okay, you're left alone. You have every right to act this way as long as you don't violate the rule. I'm not going to associate with him. And he's really not a good candidate for our movement because we're pushing values of open-mindedness and tolerance. And the reason we're pushing these values is because we're a peace movement, not just a freedom movement. If you're a freedom movement, well, all you need is the live and let live principle. Because if you comply with that, you got freedom. Nobody's violating anybody else's rights. They comply with the live and let live rule. But you don't have peace. A good example of this might be, Clyde, imagine you and I are neighbors. And I come out of my home every day and I say, you dirty, rotten, whatever, Clyde, I hate your guts. I hope you have a horrible day. And you say the same thing back to me. But neither of us trespasses on the other. We have freedom. You have the right to be a jerk to your neighbor, no problem. As long as we don't violate the rule, we're to be left alone. But I would submit to you, we don't really have peace, and we're aspiring in our movement to something bigger than freedom, which we desperately need. But we don't get to peace until we get to freedom. We got to get the law in compliance with this rule so we're not hitting each other over the head through groups and organizations and governments and other people or whatever. We got to get that rule squared away on the legal side. But we also got to push the ethics side because the world needs to hear the things we're pushing. We need to get past racism, for example. We need to really care more about the content of one's character than the color of their skin or the colors of their shirt even, right?
Yeah,
Who cares what they wear or how they dress? We need to get past that, or who you love, right? We need to get past this stuff and say, is this a person of character? Do they engage in the values that we really respect? That's someone we want in our movement. When we have enough people, the goal of this movement is to get enough people who have their hearts and minds won for the things I've just put out.
Right.
When that happens, things will change. It won't change because of a fancy jingle or sneaking the right person in office or any of that. Do not waste your time on that. We need more people who have in their hearts and minds what it is I've just said. When that happens, I can tell you some things that might occur, just like what happened with legalization of marijuana. These politicians who were all against it before said, you know, the people have changed their mind on this issue. And now they stand up and say, you know, look, even Bonner, right, the former Speaker of the House is now the champion of marijuana rights, right? He was a big drug warrior before. So politicians will say, people now are wanting to coalesce around a civilized rule, a principle called live and let live. And maybe I think that's a good idea too. I'm for live and let live. That's what I need to hear from them. I'm for, great, you're on our team. Now go do your job. Get the laws calibrated around the live and let live principle and get your ass out there and start promoting the right values. We need to say it. Live how you want to live. You have every right to be a jerk. You can be, as long as you're a jerk who doesn't violate the live and let live rule, you're to be left alone. I'm not going to trade with you. You won't be coming to my house for dinner, but you're left alone. That's called the price of freedom. That's what we pay. You want freedom? You got to allow other people to be free to do things you don't like, and to do things you think are immoral or unhealthy or unwise or something like that. If you're not big enough to be able to say, look, I don't like what this person's doing, I'm against it, I may try to talk them out of it, but at the end of the day, I recognize something much more important. This person is in charge of that decision, not me. If you're dealing with a competent adult, that is. Of course, if you're not dealing with a competent adult, and look, these can be hard questions. There are many hard questions. The world is complicated. We got to figure out what competency is. We got to figure out what an adult is. Reasonable minds can disagree. We can deal with this. We do this now. Different states have different, even ages of consent. They have different rules on self-defense. They have different definitions of murder. It's okay. Let's let the lower communities deal with these hard issues. Let them figure out the best rules, because the market of the best rules will take over. If they're doing something next door to us in the next community that's a better rule, we're going to adopt their rule.
Right.
Let's let the marketplace of people who want the best rules about freedom and peace. And we all know something, you and I, Clyde, we know about this. What I've really made is the moral case for this.
Right.
But there are other cases to make here too. Well,
Right.
one thing we know, if people follow this rule, you want to see an increase in human happiness and a decrease in human suffering.
Right.
There is, show me something we can do on the planet, Clyde, that could better improve the lives of our fellow brothers and sister human beings from any, no matter where they've been born. Who, you had nothing to do with where you were born. Wherever you were born, you're treated the same way with the live and let live rule. It applies to everybody everywhere.
Right.
And it does now, Clyde, right? Because if somebody on the other side of the planet is trying to aggress against us, we're going to say, we got a right to stop you from, even though we've never talked to them before. You don't get to aggress on it. We're going to pose that rule on you. We have to get comfortable with that. And it's okay. I don't feel bad telling some of the people who I represent in criminal cases sometimes, sorry, society doesn't let you steal from people. And it doesn't matter that you don't like that rule. They're not asking for your permission here. You have to comply with it. I don't feel bad about that. So when we have enough people, Clyde, who are on our team, and by the way, people should go to liveandletlive.org, liveandletlive.org, and join the movement. We haven't even yet kicked it off. We have so many exciting things going on in the world right now. It's unbelievable what's happening. This past Saturday, I had a group with Team Africa. This is a monthly meeting I have with our team over in Africa. They're so inspiring. They're young, they're smart, they're energetic, they understand the issues, and they're all in different countries in Africa, all chiming in, and they're hitting me with the Hawaiian shaka, live and let live, from Africa.
Wow.
I mean, this made me feel like the world really is smaller than it's been, right? We get these Zoom meetings from anywhere. And so we have a group going in Italy. There's one starting in Australia. We have a group in Poland. There's several other countries. Last night, I was on a meeting with some people, and 2 people stepped up and said, we want to start a chapter here in Northern California. I said, great. We're kicking off in 2023.
Right.
Because we want to do it professionally. It has to be done right. It has to be rolled out properly so people take it as a serious effort. This isn't a shoestring thing.
Right.
And so we're now a nonprofit. We're the Live and Let Live Foundation. We can accept tax deductions from people. We're in this for the freedom and the peace of the thing, right? I mean, isn't that the most important? Those of us who come to events like this and care about these issues, we're living very well right now, all of us. If you can come to a conference or watch this conference from your home computer and you've got this kind of leisure time to think about these issues, you live better than the vast majority of humans have ever lived on the planet. We live better than the best kings ever used to live. We live great. This is for other people, the people in Africa, for example, who aren't living so great, or the people who might not live so great if we spend another $6 trillion in the next 100 days, right? I mean, we're setting ourselves up for horrible things. And then that are coming with artificial intelligence coming now. We saw what a pandemic can do. Wait till people can start engineering them. They're bad actors in the world, and we've got to deal with them. We've got to get our act together quickly so we can deal with these kind of threats that are coming. There's still nukes all over the planet. Are you kidding? And look at the money we spend on defense right now, making sure we're prepared to kill as many human beings as possible. They're gearing up to kill us. We're gearing up to kill them. And we're burning our wealth. We're burning our wealth on stupid stuff because we can't agree on the live and let live principle. But I got news. The only thing that I really need is more reasonable people than unreasonable people, because all reasonable people I know already are going to agree with me. And I know there's more reasonable people than unreasonable people.
I think the only people that really, once they understand what this principle is, about the only percentage of people that wouldn't agree with it would be the percentage of psychopaths in the world.
Unreasonable. They're in the unreasonable category, because in order to disagree with this, you have to actually say, no, Mark, I think the law ought to allow at least a person or a group or a government or something to initiate force or fraud or coercion.
Exactly. So we're going to separate out. I love it. It's very simple. I mean, I've been involved with other things that are similar to this. I don't know if you're familiar with Richard Mayberry and his
Yeah, of
book,
course.
okay, Whatever Happened to Justice. He basically cuts it down. There's two laws.
Yeah,
One, yeah, one is,
it's really not that simple at
yeah,
all. We
yeah,
need a lot more than two laws. We need
yeah,
all of contract law and all of tort law and all of real estate law and all of criminal procedure and all of civil procedure and appellate procedure. We're not going to throw all that out the door. There's a reason we've got that hundreds and hundreds of years of jurisprudence. So I
mhm,
don't agree with people who want to make it too simple. What I'm suggesting is that complex body of things mostly is already aligned with live and let live. Contracts law deals with defining a contract. You get to make a bargain. We're trying to get to the meeting of the minds.
right,
Tort law deals with when you violate, basically, you injure another person through negligence. There
right,
is a violation of the rule there, right? You are injuring another person because you were doing something unreasonable. Maybe not substantial risk, like a sort of something you could be punished with a prison sentence, but something we might call a civil matter, right? Where you could be ordered to
right,
pay some money. So we need all of these things. We still need to define what a murder is and what a second degree murder is and what the punishments are for these and how they're going to get their trial. There's a lot that we need. But let me tell you some things we do not argue about anymore, and nor do we need to talk about anymore if we don't want to, which is what's the proper size of government? I don't care. All I want to say about that question is whatever your government is doing, it shouldn't violate the rule. And do I need to say anything more about that? I don't think so. If you
no,
think about that question, taxation obviously violates the rule. Yeah, did I just say that? Of course it violates the rule.
of course,
Question is, can we be creative enough to envision how we could still live in a civilized, productive, prosperous, wonderful society without taking people's money from them against their will? Because that's what's actually going on. We're not trying to be extremists or anything. We're just saying, look, nobody gets to violate the rule. And by the way, there are several things I talk about in my book, which I'm writing. People can pre-order it right now. It's on liveandletlive.org, where I break out in great detail and I run it through all the issues you're thinking about. How would it apply to immigration or guns or all these various questions, and as many hot issues as I can think of. And you'll find the paragraphs are pretty short here. It's not that complex to figure out if the rule's being violated. If it is, we're against it. If the rule's not being violated, well, we may not like it or whatever, but it's permitted. It's legally permitted. So we don't talk about the size of government anymore. I also don't talk about whether capitalism or socialism is better. How can I get away without talking about that? Let me tell you, Clyde, real easy. Capitalism, well, if you're not violating the rule, you get to do whatever you want. So if you're trading with another person, you're left alone. As long as there's no fraud, right, or force or coercion,
right,
that always violates the rule. If you have something what we might call crony capitalism, when a corporation pays money to a politician who affects the law to create a licensing scheme or something that violates the rule, so they can get an advantage over their competition. This you might call crony capitalism. And since the rule is violated there, then we're always against that. Sorry, crony capitalism is out. But on socialism, look, if people want to get together and pool their resources however they choose and spend them however they choose, who am I to tell them they can't do that? Of course
right,
they can do that. Socialism doesn't violate the rule unless it's involuntary socialism, right? Because
right,
if your plan is to drag somebody into it and they say, no, sorry, thank you, but I'd rather not participate in that scheme, you violate the rule when you try to drag them in. And for that reason alone, and only completely sufficient reason, for that reason alone, involuntary socialism, like involuntary everything else, violates the rule and it's out. And I'm sorry, by the way, if your system can't survive without dragging people into it who don't want to be into it,
and it's not a
there's
good system.
there's
Yeah,
a problem with your system, I would say,
right,
because free market capitalism doesn't depend on anybody else doing anything.
no,
People can trade or not trade however they like. So we don't argue socialism or capitalism anymore. I also don't argue about how you get to live and let live. You might want to pick a fight with me on that and say, well, Mark, I believe in natural law, or I'm a social contractarian, or here's my religious views, or I'm an objectivist, or economics reason, whatever, I don't know. But those are all interesting discussions, but they don't need to be part of our movement. All we care about is that you get to live and let live as an important principle, I think it's very easy to get there, but I don't want to get into the weeds of how this is fun discussion to have, but it doesn't need to be part of our movement, so it's not. We also don't argue about little implementation rules. Local communities will figure those things out.
Yeah.
Nor do we argue about another fun discussion to have, which is how do we get from where we are now to how we get there? How do we get out of things like Social Security? I've got some ideas on that I put in my book, and we have some ideas how we could transition to a more free, because we have to transition, right?
Chile did a great job of that.
Yeah, and you think about transitioning the entire world to a live and let live principled based kind of scheme. We have to transition. So there are different ideas on how this might work out. We don't have to cross this bridge right now. I wish we did, but we don't at the moment. And so there's no need to argue about that. We'll get bright people in the room together, and we'll think about it as fair as we can think about it, and we'll propose things that get us from a less free society to a more free society.
So, what's the name of your book that you're writing?
Live and Let Live. The road
Oh,
to
that's
peace,
not a surprise.
prosperity, and happiness.
Okay, Live and Let Live, peace, prosperity, happiness.
Well, it's a slight little take on Hayek's book. It says The Road to Peace, Prosperity, and Happiness. Right. Unless I decide to change the title. It's getting closer, and I really want to get as much in the weeds on all the issues that people are thinking right now, like, oh yes, but what about this or that or this or that? And I am sending it around for some criticism right now from some people, and actually they're helping me, and I'm focusing and tweaking it to get it as spot on as possible.
I want to give you one example that you might want to use for your book in terms of how a government can operate in a way that pushes the responsibility to the local level, which I think that's a very important point in this whole thing. Okay. I don't know if you're familiar or not. Most people are not. Do you know what the association is? The association was signed by the First Continental Congress in October of 1774. And the purpose of the association was to try to figure out how to do a boycott in the 13 colonies to bring England to their senses and solve our problems with them that we were having with all the, the problems with the acts, the intolerable acts and all that stuff. And so they got together, they sent their people to Philadelphia. And I think maybe 11 or 12 of the colonies had representatives there. And they came up with this document called the Association. And it did two things. It said, okay, we're going to have this embargo, but we're not going to tell people how to enforce it. We're going to let them set up their own association in their own towns, and they'll decide in each town how to enforce the embargo. And it worked incredibly. And the articles and the stories about it are amazing, because some communities had 2 people on the association committee. Some people had 200. They did it every way you can imagine, but everybody did it. And within 11 months, they brought British shipping down to 4% of what it was when it started.
I don't even try to predict complex systems, right?
Yeah.
I mean, probably not economically efficient in today's world for each little community to make such important decisions. I mean, especially with the internet and this and that. So probably a lot of decisions would be more efficiently made. Like for example, where I practice in Hawaii, they have about 1.3. I practice in Hawaii and in Arizona, but we have a nationwide practice. By the way, our firm is Attorneys for Freedom. So if you're interested, my law firm, by the way, is comprised of all activist, pro-live and let live attorneys. And they care about what we're doing with Live and Let Live. In fact, I make them sign a Live and Let Live pledge before I even look at their resume.
Beautiful.
Yeah. We're pretty hardcore on that stuff. But
the principle about local, though, I mean, I think that's a great principle to be there, and I think it fits right in with your live and let live thing. Let people decide in their own communities, how they're going to deal with these situations.
Yeah, so what I was going to get to was I practice in Arizona, but I had to take the bar exam to go to Hawaii again. And one thing I've noticed about Hawaii, 1.3 million people, they didn't start from scratch and start inventing the whole contract the code of contracts and torts and these things. What they did is they took the model code and they said, yeah, these guys worked out a pretty good set of rules and let's bring them in. Boom. Maybe they make a tweak or two here or there.
Right.
No big deal. That's probably what makes sense, right? If the rules are pretty good, then more people will adopt them. We don't want a lot of little local communities making big, important rules, but there's probably things at the edges, like, for example, the age of consent, whether this should be 18 or 17 or 16
Right.
even,
Right.
some other mechanism for figuring this out.
Right.
Maybe different communities have slightly different attitudes here.
Right.
But on the other hand, there is a point of unreasonableness, right? There could be some communities who say, okay, the age of consent is 8 years old. That's what we've decided in our community. This is why you have to have judicial review still. You have to have federalism. This is why federalism, had it worked properly, because it had the people who had the right concepts in their heart and minds been the ones in the wearing the black robes, looking over this and saying, okay, my job is to determine, is this a reasonable construction of the live and let live principle? If it is, whether I like it or not, it stands. And so somebody might say, look, 18 is good, 17, I think it should be 18, but I can't say 16 is unreasonable. It passes muster. But now here's 8. Somebody's got to say, you know what, there's not a reasonable construction. And the reason for that is the 8-year-old has a right not to be violated by whatever the age of the person is who's older. They have rights too. We have to, in the same way, we tell the guy with the gun who wants to commit the robbery, sorry, we're not going to let you do that. We tell this person who maybe wants to have sex with an 8-year-old because if they think in their community 8-year-old is okay, we get to tell them, sorry, that's not a reasonable construction. We also have to look out for bad faith constructions, right? You can imagine people who hate guns and think guns should be off the planet under all circumstances might say, you know, the mere existence of a gun in your home creates a substantial risk of harm to your neighbor. Okay, I could imagine a certain set of circumstances where that could be a fact, but you maybe have a 50 caliber belt fed, tripod mounted, automatic machine gun in your yard pointing right at my property, and it's loaded and ready to go, and only someone needs to do is pull the trigger and you're having a huge party and people are drinking. Like, I don't know, but at some point it becomes a substantial risk where I get to say, sorry, you can't do that. Communities can have different ideas on these things. There are unreasonable constructions. There are bad faith constructions. We got to watch out for those, but we also have to tolerate reasonable constructions of the principle. And this is where communities will sort of differ, and it's okay. Wouldn't it be a wonderful world if what we were arguing about is who's got the best construction and the best implementation of the best freedom and peace principle ever?
Every community is an experiment in how to deal with these things, and the ones that work the best, people adopt. And that's the way it should be.
And that's really our marketing strategy here with Live and Let Live. This will live on the strength of the idea itself, stripped naked, just put out there. Let me tell you about the Live and Let Live principle. I don't need any fluff. The idea, the strength of the idea will move the movement. That's how I feel about it. I call these in my book the kindergarten rules, right? They're the rules mommy told you when she sent you to kindergarten. She said, look, little Clyde, when you go to kindergarten, keep your hands to yourself, right? Keep your hands to yourself, and don't take the other kids' toys without their permission. Don't just go grabbing other kids' toys. Those, I thought, the same rules I was taught in Massachusetts where I grew up.
Right.
I thought those were pretty good rules in kindergarten when I was there. Sometimes they were violated, right? And there were consequences, but those were good rules. And as I went up through the ranks of my educational career, I felt the same way about the kindergarten rules the whole time, even all the way up. And when I was in law school, the rules about keeping your hands to yourself and not taking other kids' toys without their permission still was a great rule. And so as I sit here, I'm wondering at what point did these rules stop being good rules? Like, you should never get to initiate force against another person or their property. These are obvious rules. We teach them to the kindergarten kids because we all know actually in our hearts, this is the right rule. So I don't have to beat you over the head to get you to figure out live and let live. And what a nice little benefit that you already agree with it. There's already a way to say it in many different languages. People are already going like this. When you say live and let live, they say, hell yeah, live and let live. We're off to a great start before we even started, aren't we?
Great. I love it. You've sold me.
Yeah.
I kept trying to think of something that I could say that was counter, but I can't.
Yeah, to be fair, before we put the recording on,
Yeah,
I told you this was going to happen, Clyde. I
yeah,
said, Clyde, by the end of this 30 minutes, you're
yeah,
going to be a member of the Live and Let Live. I already knew that.
yeah, yeah. I'm very excited. I'm so glad that we connected because this has been great. Absolutely fantastic. And
Yeah,
good
I'm
luck.
super
Good luck.
excited. I'm looking forward to working with you to help change the world, brother. Let's do it.
Well, this interview is going to be seen by a whole lot of people, so it's very, very good that we got together here.
Let me put the word out and say right now, because we're not kicking off until 2023, we're soliciting for people who really understand this and want to help. We're getting ready to form up local chapters. So if you're thinking you want to be a local chapter somewhere, contact us. Yeah, we're going to check you out. We're going to make sure that what happened to the Tea Party movement doesn't happen to the Live and Let Live movement. It started out as a real pro-freedom thing, and then it kind of went off course, as so many movements do. We're not going to let that happen. The principle is simple. It's really not confusing. And I think people can understand it and know it makes sense. So that's the principle. And we're going to keep it on track. And if you like the principle and you're willing to roll up your sleeves a little and help us change the world, give me a shout out. Just go to liveandletlive.org, contact us through the website, and let's get a chapter going. And I'm open to ideas. I'm still really looking for some people who are really going to be the big movers and shakers and help to be really one of the early founders of this movement. We have to succeed, Clyde. We have to succeed. We really don't have an option to fail here.
I agree, and my optimism level has gone up a whole lot because I really feel like you've taken an angle that can really unite people. Really, I really do.
We want to unite people. This is a uniting thing. We should unite.
And everything you said about socialism versus capitalism and everything, you're absolutely right. And there's examples of that. The Amana colonies in Iowa, that was a socialist experience.
And the kibbutz in Israel is another example. I don't know how well it works, but look, we can tell people how to live.
The one in Amana lasted for like 1.5 generations, and that. But so that was fine. But they were able to do it, and they bought up that whole county. And before anybody was there hardly, a group of Germans, very wealthy German, and they did everything. So everyone contributed everything that they did, and we're all
here for such a short time on the planet right now. We can't get along. We're so lucky to even bump into each other and get to know each other for such a short period of time. We can't get along. Are you because people are different? Are we really still stuck in this skin color thing? We got to get past this on all sides. I don't care. I don't know
how you feel about it. I'm 71, and I've seen such a tremendous change in racial attitudes in a positive way in my lifetime. I can't even express it.
We both know, Clyde, the vast majority of people are not racist. There are definitely jerks in the world. But I can tell you this. First of all, I would say probably you could be very comfortable saying all reasonable people in the world are past this. And do you really care about the tint in somebody's skin, or where they were born, or what foods they eat, or what religion they worship or don't worship, or who do you really care about that?
No.
It's hard to imagine people who are intelligent and civilized would care about this at any time, let alone in 2021. So we got to, in our movement, we're moving on. We're been past it. In fact, let me just say, maybe some of this most controversial shouldn't be, but you have a right to be a racist as long as you don't violate the rule. You have every right to be a peaceful jerk, I guess I would say. And I use people here in a different sense than I talked about it earlier. But you have a right to do that. I don't want you as part of the movement. I would have nothing to do with you, but you have a right to do that. You have no right to violate the rule for any reason, whether it's racism or some other reason. I don't care. We need to be comfortable with the fact that in a free world, idiots have, and I'm sorry to refer to them that way, but that's how I feel about them, but they have a right to harbor any idiotic positions towards any groups of people, no matter how ignorant or unfounded, so long as they don't violate the rule. Right? We can say that about relations. That's what matters. we don't care what you believe. You can believe anything you want. You can act any way you want, so long as you don't violate the rule, period.
What was the name of your book again?
Live and let live, the road to peace, prosperity, and happiness. A little bit of a take on Hayek's book.
Yeah. The Road to Serfdom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful work. And
Let's work together, my brother. Let's make it happen.
we will. We will absolutely going to make this happen. That is tremendous. I'm so excited we got you into this event, which will go live on June 24th. And, you know, hopefully.
Send me a link or something, or
Oh, yeah.
blast this thing out.
No, I'm going to send you a whole thing in about just a couple of days on the events and what you can do to get the whole summit out there.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. We want to reach as many. I mean, we're still pre-launch right now, so I want to make sure I'm going. I know it's slow, but it has to be launched correctly. It has to be launched professionally. Everything, the I's got to be dotted, the T's got to be crossed. And yeah, it's good. If we want to be taken as a serious movement, and everybody involved in it has a very serious attitude about what we're doing.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just speaking to our audience right now, folks. I'm so glad you came, first of all, and I can't imagine that anybody left at any point in this time because you know, it was so compelling all the way through. And Mark did a great job of explaining this. Your enthusiasm is infectious. Your ideas are infectious.
Freedom and peace.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say that, you know, of the 50 interviews we have in this summit, what we just heard was one of the most compelling and one of the most unifying and one of the most uplifting messages. And we've got a lot of phenomenal speakers here. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you, all of you who came tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for hearing me out.
All right. And good night, everyone. And hope you get back to our next event, okay? Thank you.